Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's nice to see you here. It's a pleasure to see you in Lithuania, Vilnius. Your presence here means that we are starting Baltic Dance Congress in the frame of Baltic Dance Platform. So that's awesome, yes. Thanks for the help and applauses. My name is Dmitrius, and these few days, 3, 4, depends on how long you will be staying, you will see me, how to say, more frequently than you used to. I will try to say 1 or 2 jokes. Please laugh. Yes, thank you. Soon we will begin our first panel. But before that, the project manager of the Baltic Dance Platform and Congress, Anastasia Kaminska, would like to share a few words.
Dear people, first of all, of course, thank you. It's such a pleasure, such happiness today to gather, not online like this, to see you all here, to talk, to share. We are really happy. And yes, congratulations, this is the 4th edition of Baltic Dance Platform. And 2 years ago, when we had the 3rd platform, we decided we want to go a little bit deeper and explore what is it like Baltic dance identity. We really wanted to know more about each country of Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, about artists, to find or build new connections. This is why we decided, okay, let's create a Baltic Dance Network. And I'm really grateful for the 6 partners of this network from Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and for all the supporters who supported this platform and network. And one of the idea was like, maybe we should, not maybe, we have to today, when we live in a such turbulent time, when we face so many changes, when we face so many difficult things, we decided we need to meet today, we need to talk today, and even not to talk, but discuss, share, and also support each other. This is why we have now this Congress, this Baltic Dance Congress, but of course we will talk not only about Baltic dance identity or Baltic dance, we will talk about many situations and challenges what we have now today in a dance field and in the art field. And I believe there will be so many discussions during these 4 days. And on April 25th, we have the protest. It will be a very huge protest because we all want to support our journalists, the freedom of the word. And we would like also, if you will be staying still in Vilnius, please, you can join us because it's very important. We are against the politicization of our national television and radio. And I feel there are people, who face today also in their countries so many challenges. Please be open, share. We really invite you. It's not only the formal format of Congress. We would like you to participate, to share, to ask questions, to provoke. Everything is fine. We are ready. And yes, please enjoy. Thanks again for coming here.
Woo! Yeah. So now we would like to invite moderator of the first panel, Kristina Saver. Please come to stage. And here you can choose the best place for you.
Okay,
yes,
you.
Nice. And to join her, we are inviting Kart Tonison and Nele Tidelep from Estonia. Woo! Agnese Bordyukova and Maria Saveiko from Latvia. And of course, Birutė Banevičiūtė and Dovydas Trimaitis from Lithuania. So, Kriste, we hand it to you.
Thank you. It's very unusual to have this equipment on my face, but my panelists, they're more lucky. They can use the microphone. I hope we have two. Um, my name is Krista Gota-Save, and I have been invited to moderate this panel. Although I have little to do with dance, I'm working with drama theater mostly, so it's a big honor for me. And thank you for trusting me with this important and very interesting discussion too. So when I read the title of the discussion, I immediately thought about a few things that I want to share with you and with the panelists. I am artistic director of Sirenos Theater Festival, which is also parallel to New Baltic Dance. And we had this situation that a few years ago, we had a guest. I will not mention which country and which theater this guest was from, but he came to, it was a he. He came to with a presentation of his theater. He was invited, we paid his travel and so on. He was presenting at the festival in front of an audience like this, more or less, and he started by comparing his country, which was Wales, to our country. And on the map, he was showing Latvia. And the whole presentation was based on the comparison of Latvia and Lithuania. And it's a funny anecdote, but at the same time, it's our reality. We are three small nation countries that have something in common. But what do we have in common? So I was thinking about this title of our discussion, what makes Baltic dance Baltic, identity or invention? I was thinking, what is Baltic? Does it refer to the Baltic Sea? But in that case, we have 9 countries that are around the Baltic Sea. I was thinking, is it a construct? I heard recently someone being offended by being called that they are from a Baltic country because they said it's a Soviet construct, a kind of modernized version of Pribaltica. And yeah, or maybe it's just a convenient term which we use because it's easier to pinpoint the region rather than our small country. So my first trial is to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, their name, their background or work, what they are doing, and where they come from. So we will see how much of the Baltic identity or local identity we have while talking about ourselves. So maybe we can start with you.
Hello. My name is Nele. I'm from Estonia and I work mainly in the field of performance. I am at the moment doing my master's in choreography and performance in Gießen, but I have my bachelor in visual arts in sculpture from the Estonian Academy of Arts. And yeah, right now I work in the field of performance. I direct, I perform, I also do dramaturgy sometimes, and sometimes I also write.
Thank you, Nele. Hello, my name is Gert. I'm from Estonia. I'm a freelancer dancer, choreographer, and dance teacher. That is what I do mainly. During the week, I teach children and young adults. And I'm also a member of Suga United Dancers. And we make performances for adults and young audience. That's it.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Maria and I'm from Latvia. I'm a dance artist, I'm a choreographer, performer, and I'm also a member of contemporary dance organization Sixth. You can see it here. We're quite young dance company. We are only 3 years old. yes, that's it for now.
Hello, my name is Agnese. I'm from Latvia, and I've been working in contemporary dance field in Latvia almost for 20 years now. So I have done also quite many and different type of things. I have been and still am sometimes a performer. I have done my own work as a choreographer. I'm also teaching right now, and I have done work with communities and have worked with professionals and non-professionals. And in the last 3 years, I've been a chairperson of Choreographers Association, which is a dance organization in Latvia which unites contemporary dance artists. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, I'm Beruta, and I'm choreographer and artistic director of Dansema Dance Theatre. And for the last 20 years, I'm focused on creating dance performances for babies and children with disabilities. Before that, I used to create for adult audience. Before that, I used to teach at school. Before that, I used to teach at the University for Dance Pedagogy. Before that, I used to work in pharmacy and immunology institute. Before that, I have formal education in biology and chemistry. Thank you.
My name is Dovydas. I am from Lithuania. I study dance in the Netherlands. I work in France, and I live between Marseille and Brussels. And I'm a dancer and choreographer.
Thank you, everybody. As you can see, nobody mentioned that they are from the Baltics. So I was wondering why. Let's talk a little bit about this. What do you think? Is there this common denomination of coming from a Baltic country? Speaking of Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, not the other 6. We don't care about them. So do you think there is some common ground, not even speaking yet about dance, but in general, culturally, apart from geography, which we know? Do you feel like there is something that identifies you, for example, the people sitting here on the panel? Is there something you share just because you are from one of these 3 countries? Whoever wants to start.
Well, I have the microphone, so I will start. I think there are 2 different ways to see at this term, if there's something shared enough, how we see ourselves and then how people who are not from here, if they think there's something common. I think when I lived here, I thought there's nothing common, and I didn't feel more related to a Latvian person than to someone from Western Europe, let's say, in my mind. When you move abroad, you see that for people, we're kind of all the same. And even though I would say, no, we're very different, at certain point it doesn't really, or it's not the only thing that matters how we see each other, but also how others see us. And I think it can be useful to be seen as Baltic people, as Baltic countries. So I wouldn't say if it exists or not, but if it's useful in certain situations.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else would like to comment on this, or why they don't present themselves as Baltic in this panel?
I don't know. I kind of don't think myself as a Baltic choreographer or whatever Baltic. And I agree with Dovydas when he says it's more when we need to have this name for certain reasons. But for me, when we travel somewhere with our production, even when we started to do that, like in 92 or 93, I never said I'm from Baltic. I always was saying I'm from Lithuania, and that was very important to say that, to name the country. And at some point, of course, I think probably it's more political thing. For example, when we present something like this is Baltic region, but then it's very hard to how to say ground why we call it Baltic, except that this is like a Soviet narrative. So, and with these similarities or differences, I was thinking that it's more we are in common because we are not in the near the Baltic Sea, but because we were in Soviet Union, and that gives us some kind of maybe common background where we started to have contemporary dance and how we developed from there when everything was forbidden, this freedom of expression, and probably it's the starting point that what we have is that what unites us. That's kind of my point of view.
Yeah, I actually wanted to add to that, because last year when the very first Baltic Dance Network meeting happened in Riga, it was last year's June, there were artists and representatives of organizations there, and that also was kind of a topic as well, which came up. Yeah, that is something what unites us, as because like something what we can define as modern contemporary dance started in similar times, approximately at the same time, and so because of that as well, probably we have faced like quite common or similar maybe challenges and
so you mean
things.
historical similarities, but do you also feel, Agnes, like what Dovida said, that when you are abroad or traveling, you feel more identity of being Baltic or more identity of being Latvian than while being in the country? Or is not the case?
Sometimes it's easier for foreigners to somehow describe because they can get they can identify Baltic countries. So at least it's a bigger area, bigger region, because they might not be like introduced or known. They might not know like Latvia exactly, but at least Baltics is something what they have heard, hopefully in most of the cases. So yeah.
Yeah, speaking of the Soviet narrative, what came already, for me, sometimes people also categorize choreographers who are coming from Baltic states as East Europe artists or whatever people. And for me, I think this term East Europe comes even more with this Soviet narrative than Baltic states. And somehow hearing this East Europe, it comes already with all this history and all the background, and it feels more pressure than saying I'm from Baltic states. But it's interesting, I've never thought of myself to introduce myself saying, hi, my name is Maria and I'm from Baltic states. I don't know, I've never thought of this.
But we have probably all heard people saying, hi, I'm Zoran and I'm from the Balkans. No, it happens. But the Baltic identity is not so, I don't know, we don't use it so much.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe if I were now not in Vilnius, but somewhere in Balkans, then maybe I would use this. Yeah, somehow.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if I can take the question a little bit further and ask you whether the recent geopolitical situation and especially the full-scale invasion in Ukraine and the subsequent war has added to your identity of, or how how has it influenced your identity, your presenting yourself, and perhaps even your work as you travel now, as opposed to what it was before? Is there any influence?
It also has to do with the previous question. What I was thinking, that in addition to the shared past and how it influences, actually what I have noticed now is quite a lot of shared values when it comes to questioning or commenting the situation going on in Ukraine, for example, that there is not a lot of question whether to support it or not, for example. And this is really something that has made me it has made me have a lot of trust in that region, or somehow that we have a lot in common, which of course comes from the past, but that this identity can be attached to something, not only painful history, but shared values that are present in our everyday life now. For me, I remember in 2022 when I first went abroad, I think it was in March, and I remember that then it was quite a heavy topic for everyone. When I went to Germany, everybody asked me, how is it in Estonia? Are you safe? What's gonna happen? And so on. And then like 1 week later, I was in France and nobody asked anything about it. I'm not sure why exactly, but I somehow also feel that depending on the context, the understanding of where Estonia is also very different. And I think it's also maybe more to do with the previous question, that when you have to somehow start making the picture bigger, then maybe you will say the Baltics, or like that this is maybe something that people know.
And I would add also that I think there's a lot of focus, and we always want to put accent on asking how a specific population wants to identify itself, not only in relation to Baltics, but for all the populations, especially oppressed ones. We like ask, how do you identify yourself? And I think there's a bit too much accent on that, as if it's the only way how identity works. I think how other people see you is at least equally as important as how you see yourself. And I think it's intelligent not to oppose these two identities, how I see myself and how others see me, but to try to, like, in a way, combine and make them go in the same direction. So many people maybe would say Baltic or even Eastern Europe, and that has some weird aftertaste for us, maybe. But at the same time, the current geopolitical situation, I think now I'm like happy to be from Eastern Europe, to say I'm originally from here, because of these certain values that I feel like, especially for the past 4 years, I feel like it's almost like I don't speak the same language with certain people who, who would say, let's not invite war by giving more money to defense, which something, I think for most of us, it's, we wouldn't question that. And so, as much as maybe the division between Eastern and Western Europe, we could say came from the West, that it's the Western Europe named us or created this division, I don't think it's wrong just because it came from outside. Actually, in the end, it became right, because there is some sort of division in values, in history, and values come from history. So I think, yeah, you're all right in that sense.
Yes, Birute?
I just, maybe it's also, I don't know whether it's really so much connected with the war in Ukraine, but the word colonialism, or like colonizing or occupying the other country, I think for me it's now really, how to say, it's important sometimes to show that how it's possible to fight you know, when you occupied or colonized. And I remembered last year we had a tour in Cameroon, and on the border, on the passport check, the officer asked why you don't speak French. And I said, because I don't know, I kind of can talk with you in English. And then he said, so what are the language you can speak? And then I said Lithuanian. And of course I could see that, I mean, no clue what is this language. But I understood that for certain people, like being white, it's like you are colonizers and they identify you as from France. So I was so happy at this point, you know, to really, it's probably the only time when I was so conscious about saying my nationality and having this, that we are not colonizers at a certain point. So I think it's also about when you present yourself in certain contexts, it's probably not only cultural and historical, but also this, I don't know, political probably aspect that sometimes pops out.
Thank you. I would like to open the discussion to everyone. Please comment or ask questions. We are happy to discuss it all with you. It's not only a conversation between us. So maybe any questions or comments so far? No? Okay. Anyone else would like to comment on the geopolitical situation and identity?
What I hear right now and what I have felt is that the connection between us is not something that comes out of blue, that it's like really strong, and together we are stronger in anyhow that we represent us as Estonian or a Lithuanian or a Latvian. So we're very proud about our nation, but for together we are like seeing more in an artistic way, in a cultural way, but also in a political way. I think we are like more heard.
Okay. Nobody else?
There is so much to tell, and actually it resonates so much also what I hear now. And I just wanted to add a small thing about the values. I think this war and in general the political situation near us and in the world, it's shaping us all the time as persons, as artists. And I think this specific war in Ukraine, it shaped, no, it's not shaped, it pushed us to shape the values. So we're sharing these values, I completely agree. And I feel it and I see it everywhere in media and in people just society around me, everywhere. But yeah, I felt this as a really, really hard push, and to be very specific and very fast, so I can verbalize my values, not only to my family and the closest people, but also further in the world using, I don't know, social media, arts and everything. And I'm here today because I was picked for Open Studio to present my work, and my work was done, and I started to do it just, I don't want to say just because of the war, but it was for sure a very, very powerful impulse to start doing this solo work. And in some way, yeah, it shaped me as an artist and what I'm doing, what I'm saying. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I can comment, because like in Latvia still there is quite big like a Russian like population, and maybe before war I think it has been quite not very clear as well. We kind of in Riga we had many streets which had like Russian names, and it was very present, much more. But now, after a war, because also, of course, because government and one is really stating very clear position, like state-wise, politically as well. I think it has, helped also for society as well, just to be very clear, or where do you stand, and which is the right place where to stand. Because before that, I felt it was much more like unclear, and still people were like, okay, Russia, and not so many like these Russian things. And now all this, at least in Riga, all the streets now has been like changed to Latvian names, which is it was nice.
Yes, thank you for sharing this. I think it's an important point that in these crisis situations we are forced to choose between two binaries, between black and white, and it's really difficult sometimes to explain this situation to people who are not bordering Russia, why we are so radical, it seems to them. So yes, it feels a lot of times, I guess, that when you have, I just came back from a network in Italy, network meeting, and I was very happy that Polish and Latvian colleagues were there, because it was easier for me to not feel crazy about certain things. If we have any questions, we do. Okay, please go ahead.
I'm the Ukrainian artist living in Lithuania, and I think I'm the only one Ukrainian here. I just want to add that from my point of view, when talking about the identity, normally people looking for similarities. It's normal for all people. When we want to connect with other people, when we want to find the common language, and only in the extreme situation, like we're talking about now, people started doing the differences and started thinking how they can separate them from other identity and to form or to shape in words their identity so that nobody else could say that it is the same like that one. So I think it's okay that it is not so clear what's the difference between Baltic identity or in some other countries, because there is no such an extreme situation like this. That's just my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or reflections at this point, please?
Hi, my name's Emily. There's a lot of talk about shared values, or also you said about being there with Ukrainian and at a dance platform with other Ukrainian or other Baltic artists and feeling like you weren't crazy. For a complete outsider, I'm from the UK but based in Germany. Could you maybe explicitly say what those shared values are, or what it is about then being at such a platform that you felt like this commonality, that you were supported in a way?
Why I said that I felt less crazy? Because we had a big discussion about whether we should program Russian artists. And we had a big talk about Venice Biennale and the whole situation. And our position for people who are bordering Russia is very radical, no. And we don't see the dialogue here. So that was the background, but maybe some...
I think, of course, it's my point of view, but what I found, what our shared values, but probably it's shared values with any democratic system. It's freedom of choice, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and of course the respect to human rights. And I think that's what we were lacking when we started, contemporary dance development. So this feeling of that you can create and talk about whatever you want, and not that is politically allowed to do that. I think that is values that we shared in our region, but also I think in any kind of democratic structure.
Birute, do you mean by this that there are some things that people in Germany or the UK wouldn't say that we say, or like what kind of shared values of freedom of speech we have here that you feel they don't?
I don't know whether about French or German. For me, it's more from when I travel to so many different countries, I see sometimes that when we say what is our performance, like what it will be there, at some point they ask, like I feel that they are, is it allowed or not allowed? Is it like appropriate to be on stage and whatever? So it's kind of censorship is kind of hanging in the air, maybe not. At some point I know that they were like saying that you cannot dance with your legs without covering, or you cannot dance about death, or you cannot show something you know, that is not appropriate. So yeah, I'm kind of and also the other thing what I want to say that sometimes in our Western European culture, I think we take all those rights that we have for granted. And that's the awful thing, because anytime it can just go like that. What we experiencing now and what experienced in Russia, people who are with some brains and thinking anywhere, you know, so I think the other shared value might be that we have to value our values and our freedoms, what we have, and sometimes we just, it's there, and then we don't think that it's like kind of valuable.
And I think the fact that the liberal democracy came to the region relatively late compared to Western Europe, there is still memory. For some people, lived memory. For me, it's I never lived in Soviet Union, but it's very, very present. The stories and the memory is that we have these like democratic, liberal values and ideals, but I think in the Baltic countries and in Eastern Europe, there's still a lot of grounding in reality. So I think on one hand, we see things more black and white, and on the other hand, we see things a bit more nuanced than people in Western Europe. So, for example, I think there is a lot of thought, especially in liberal circles in the West, that we have to, you know, respect all people and all communities, and everyone is human and deserves human rights, and so we should communicate more and find peace through dialogue and diplomacy and not through war. And I think it's very easy to say to people that don't really realize the things that happen when you wait for someone to come to talk to them, you know, and certain people have said something very radically. Certain Ukrainian friends that I have, that when you know that there's a risk of you being raped and murdered, you don't want to talk. Like, and it's a radical view because you don't want to risk it even, in the sense that maybe you would make a mistake by being violent to someone, but when you know what can happen and people have seen what happened, you don't want to do this. So there is not anymore these ideals that actually don't work in real life unless we're all in our small circle agreeing with all these ideals. When there's someone that doesn't agree, it's very hard to still keep your ideals and talk to someone who doesn't have the same ideals. On the border of European Union, of Eastern Europe, it's very clear, this idea. But on the other hand, there's other things that I think we see in a much more nuanced way. For example, again, in the West, I think in the past decade, the idea of nationalism became something completely negative. If you're a nationalist, that's something that we have to look away from, again, especially in liberal circles. I think in the Baltic countries, in countries like Poland, in Eastern Europe, the nationalism is something that allowed us not to be occupied and oppressed. The celebration of our language, of our culture, of our, I don't know, folk traditions and all that while in the West, people see nationalism as something related to radical right and to oppression of other populations, you know? And I think here, what we can do is bring the nuance that I think without our point of view, people just wouldn't see it and would name it, design it as something completely that has to be rejected. So, yes.
Thank you.
Can I add to your question? As Dovida said, you know, we are like 36 years now independent, so it's very young countries. I mean, we're experiencing now the freedom, and we know the enemy. You know, we have a sign after we started now it's there's a lot of protests since the September happening here, and we have this new saying. We realized, don't get used to evil. And we know our evil, you know, we know Russia very well, and why we so radical, because we know the enemy. And we have this border, we have a connection, we have relationships, and we had relationships in the past, we had all these talks, and now we see what's happening. And actually what happened here in Lithuania, also talking from contemporary dance perspective, we were fighting for recognition, you know. It's for us, contemporary dance is something like amazing, you know. It's contemporary, it's free, it's like we connect with West Europe, with our art, through our artists, through our art. And when we got this Minister of Culture from Populistic Party, because I was in front of, protest as a contemporary dance person, like representing contemporary dance community, the first thing he said, but he will cut the budget to our organization, and all the money he will share among the traditional dance. And that was a sign, first sign, but our existence, it's not so, you know, you cannot take it as granted, because it might be changed in a minute. And, you know, you can lose everything what you did. So for us, always, you know, what we're talking about is very fragile. It can disappear immediately, because we're still very independent sector, and in all the region we are very independent. We're still looking for our face, you know, identity. We you know, it's hard to talk about dance identity, because when we started, actually it was very interesting. When we started a Baltic Dance Platform in 2019 with our colleagues from Latvia and Estonia, we were thinking, wow, we're really similar, you know, we can call it Baltic Dance easy. We're so similar, it probably is going to be like the platform which all the shows will be more or less the same, you know. And when we did a platform, and after the first platform, we realized that we don't know each other. Because we are so different, you know, we are so different, but still working in the same region based on the same, you know, experience and history. And I think this is the strongest ties connects us, because we know the enemy, we know where we live, and we know this fragility of being here in this part of the world, and especially now.
Thank you, Gintare. Anybody else from the panelists would like to say?
I maybe go a little bit on a different field, but I think one of the key points is the educational system, because that's what we are doing in schools or even in kindergartens. The way we talk about things, what we do, and that is the most important thing, how we can make a better future for the children, that they know the history, that they know the values, that they have the way of thinking to make difference between truth and false. And when connecting to the dance, as I see in my work, dance is one tool to make them feel better, because as we have come through for so many crises now, starting with COVID and now the wars, it really makes children and young people anxious. Their mental health is in a crisis, and what I see what I can do is I can give them the tools of dance to make them feel better, to feel the real connections, to really look each other's eyes, but not only with a fear, but also with a trust, to trust themselves, to trust the person next to him or her. Something like that. Yeah, the educational system is something we should hold.
Thank you. We talked a little bit about the current situation, and as you see, there are a lot of issues that we have raised and a lot of aspects to this discussion, but I want to address a little bit the future. And for this, I have prepared this question, which is a little bit long, so bear with me when I read it. So I just want us to think or imagine the future of the Baltic identity in dance. And I was thinking about the changing fabric of our society. And there are those things that we share between Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. What I mean are low birth rates, the aging population, more females getting education than males, much more females attending all kinds of arts events than males, statistics. We have an increasing number of people of different ethnical background and different racial background coming to live in our countries. We have the influx, of course, also of Ukrainian refugees, Belarusian refugees, and so on. We have other similar changes, human rights and queer LGBTQ plus communities who also need to be heard and need to be on stage. How those factors do you think will influence the way Baltic dance identity is shaped in, let's say, 10 years from now? Will we see this more on stage? Will we see this in terms of bodies on the stage, performers, racial, ethnic backgrounds of the performance on the stage, topic-wise? Because for now, I think we barely see anything at all. Although the demographics are changing, but when we speak about audience and the stage, performers on the stage, artists who create the shows, we barely see any change. So my question is, let's think about where we are going and how it will change.
I agree that at least in Estonia, that kind of diversity that you were referring to is really underrepresented in what I see in dance and performing arts. When I think about the future, I think it's super important to question what kind of art scene we leave for the people that come after us, and what kind of working conditions we normalize, because somebody has to change this. And the constant state of insecurity, also how that affects personal relationships, working relationships, the environments we find ourselves in. And I think that how this could change, the representation could change, I think education actually. Because how I'm coming from a privileged background, because I think that I can make a piece. And this is already such privilege that not everyone has. And I always knew that this would be a possibility for me. It was never a question. Even though I come not from theater background, this is just something that has to be a possibility, even on an abstract level, basically for everyone. And it also comes with representation, that you see somebody like me is doing this, so I can also do it.
Please, Birute. Okay.
Thinking about future, young people with who I am working, I see a really bright future because the way they are thinking, the way they really care about the environment, they care about themselves, about the person next to them. I think they are like they're on a right way, but this workplace where I work with young people is maybe different from like average Estonian school. I don't know. I have heard that it is so. So I cannot speak all the young people in Estonia. But there is another trap. I think there is, and I think it's global. How they can be really themselves and creating their own thing in this huge information they are, but they see they have so many cell phones and computers, and there's so many information that how they deal with it. That is one thing that I am thinking about. When we were, like, I'm representing the first generation, everything came out like from ourselves, or we saw very little, and we were searching like this our own language. I think now the artists do it the same, but there's so many things that influence them, so much more information, and I don't know.
Thank you. So we have 10 minutes left for the discussion. So let's take Birute's comment and anybody else if you want, and then we can take one more question.
Yeah, I always, when we start talking about the identity, I always remember the late John Ashford saying when I asked, when he was in Airwaves and examining the videos, and I said, how then you know that this piece is from Lithuania? And he was saying, when I see 10 women in long black dresses, I know that it's from Baltics or something, you know. So, yes, it was a very long time ago. So, but I am still kind of thinking about this. It's also, when I think about future, it somehow still, it comes to my mind where we started, you know. And I think when we started, we, as you say, we were self-educated. Nobody of us like had the formal dance technique education or composition, you know, education. So we were kind of very similar, very maybe romantic about what we want to dance, you know, about love and life and how we are free, you know, and how life is beautiful, maybe sometimes not that beautiful, but anyway, we still are happy people. So everything was in a certain kind of, you know, that kind of level, but and then it was, I think it's this, I remember also we had this similarity or something when we were seeing the performances from young generation, when we were already middle generation. So there are stages, like the first they use in the performance chairs, the next level is apples, then the next level is sand, and the next level is water. So sometimes apples are changed into oranges, you know, sometimes water is mixed with sand, sometimes there are some feathers. So then you could see that kind of we are in the same identity. I don't know when an identity. Then it was a problem with men on stage. So no men on stage. So finally we got some men on stage, and finally we got some gay men on stage. And that's really big, you know, step forward. So what I think about future, I want it to be so diverse with everything, so that nobody looking at Airwaves videos could tell that this is from Baltic. So we have themes, we have, you know, anything. But what I also relate to what you said, that I still hope that there will be human dance, not only artificial intelligence dance. So I hope for human bodies on stage.
I agree with everything everyone said, but I think when we think about future, it's very important all these topics like racial, ethnic, gender diversity, all this. But I think for some of us, to bring it back to politics, we're thinking if in 2 years, what Gintare said in a recent interview that just came out, we don't know if the Baltic Dance Platform will happen because of internal political issues. And also, if we're occupied by Russia, there's not going to be any Baltic Dance Platform or any Baltic dance. So it's, I feel a bit of a tension between trying to bring all these narratives that are so important. Again, in Western Europe, this is the main political problem. But here we're also thinking if we will be able to create anything at all. So that's the first thing that I want to reflect. Another thing, I think we now have so many possibilities, not only to include people from different racial backgrounds within Lithuania, but I mean, or Latvia or Estonia, but we can work internationally with European partners, with, you know, if you work with someone from France, their racial, ethnic makeup of the society is very different from ours. So it would make sense that we could collaborate with someone from there and have more diversity. But there are issues, because if you do that, talking from Lithuanian point of view, that the main subsidy source would say you don't have enough Lithuanian people in your team, so we cannot really fund you, which is something that wouldn't exist in maybe some other countries. So there's also this issue. And the third thing, you talked about the influx of people from different ethnicities, language backgrounds to our region. And I think we will face a real question about what state and nationalities, because until now we based independence of all the three countries on ethnicity, on shared ethnic, let's say, background and language. And I think looking at Ukraine and how Ukrainian state was built could actually be a source of inspiration both for the three Baltic countries, but also for other countries in Eastern and Western Europe, because Ukraine is a country built largely as a state, but as a political state, because it has so many different ethnicities, not only Ukrainians, that are all Ukrainian. And I think it is a big question that we have to do, first of all, internally on understanding how much language, ethnic background, historical understanding plays into what we define as Lithuanian, as Latvian, as Estonian. And I think we barely start to touch this question, but first we have to figure that out before someone comes on stage or before we have any kind of diversity on a representational level, I think.
Thank you. So let's take the last question, please.
Hey, I just wanted to ask for all of you to maybe continue the topic Birute a little bit touched about. This is the 4th edition of Baltic Dance Platform, and like I suppose like most of you have attended the platforms before, and maybe you already have some observation. So what is the stage and movement representation and the similarities and differences then between the countries, or, you know, just to maybe talk a little bit more about what actually we represent as an art.
I think it's also easier when someone from like side looks at it as well. I remember there was, I think in Tallinn, it was a Baltic Dance Platform, and then afterwards, she's originally Russian, but she studied in Finland, Anna Kozonina, and she wrote article about it, and then she defined Latvian dance like that. Many people just are very concerned with their traumas or childhood traumas, and then I thought, yeah, sure. My first piece was about my childhood trauma, and and then many, of those which were represented were also concerning that, and I kind of cannot deny that. Yeah, so I feel there is something, but also when you are kind of in this level, there is also some certain type of order how someone individuality or even collectively things can develop, and then there is something which you kind of need to process actually to talk about like bigger ideas. Also coming back a little bit to the previous question, in Latvia I think as well our working conditions has been so challenging for many years that actually just recent years I don't know, I start to feel that also from other colleagues in different other fields, and maybe also politically we are started to be recognized a bit, and also since this year we got our first dance house venue, which is also it's like crazy after 30 years of existence, and yeah, so it's like, and now it feels like okay, so maybe this is actually this this opportunity to actually start to develop something which also society can recognize also as a part of a culture, etc. But yeah,
we are very jealous about that, about the dance house.
In Riga Circus, you should come and visit. There is Cynthia, she's our first dance house producer.
I remember from after the first couple of Baltic dance platforms, me and some of my friends, we were like, you discuss, because also it was for many the first time you discovered what people do in Latvia and Estonia, because before that it was really the most stereotypical thing that I remember from thinking about it, and it's very biased Lithuanian point of view, is that Latvians work with narratives. There's always like a dance theater. Estonians, it's non-dance, experimentalist, and duo style. And Lithuanians, they love dance and physical, and it always says physical, close to pure dance. So I'm very curious if this platform will actually confirm this, or if something changed. So we'll see.
Any more ideas about the differences between the three countries' dance scene?
This is actually my first Baltic Dance Platform, and I'm very curious to see what will be the differences. But just before this panel, I called my friend, who is also a colleague, who has been to some of the platforms, and she actually said exactly what you just said.
I agree totally with Dovydas what he said, but about the similarities. I liked what was said about when we think about our neighbors, we think we know everything about them. So actually we don't really go there to see, and these kind of meetings is really very good to see, because it's like, oh, okay, they are always here, so anytime, and you never go there. But I just always remember when we say similarities in language, so Lithuanian and Latvian are so different from Estonian, so we cannot even talk about kind of this similarity. But even with Latvian and Lithuanian, it's when I also started, maybe we should look for differences, and the main difference, which is just amazing, it's about the word dance, which is in Latvian dejot. Deja, and it sounds, they have very huge festival Lakes Dejot, which in Lithuanian sounds time to weep. So, in Lithuania, dance is šokis, and in Latvian, dance is deja. So it's, I mean, even in the name, we have so much difference. So I would love to see more differences in what we have rather than similarities.
So I think that's it. Thank you very much. We are out of time. It was a beautiful discussion. Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you, the amazing audience. Thanks, and enjoy the Baltic platform.
So thank you all. We have now a short break, 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. Please come back at 6 p.m. And please move your body, shake your body outside there, and hydrate with coffee, tea.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. We are Laima and
Maciek.
Introduction. We are two artists. We do not always feel it has been the best choice. Even being an artist can include many directions of so-called choice, especially in the interdisciplinary contemporaneity we live in. One can be an achiever of success and recognition, that kind of artist that everyone wants to be. And therefore we all keep going, networking and applying. One can also be a never-funded one that also keeps the hopes alive on a far-reaching mirage-like horizon of success. One day maybe, and anyways, it's good to learn the funding language, they say. Activism is an option too, and no matter what is your vision of options, everything slightly, more or less, depends on the context of the project. Of course, and the imitation of how to be an artist, according to its core idea and for its purpose. To manage the budget and change the slippery slope of our civic society within it. Or contribute to one or the other community that most likely we will never have the chance to meet again, as we need to keep up with the survival game based on the articulation of individuality. As artists, we might be a good example of the topic itself, the imitation imperative, but also the experts, if you wish.
So the imitation imperative describes a cultural and artistic condition in which mimicry, repetition of political gestures, identities, institutional forms, and aesthetic languages operates as the organizing logic. At its core, the concept of imitation imperative looks into how post-colonial and post-Soviet subjectivities, neoliberal culture economies, and institutional canons are copied, internalized, and circulated through embodied practices, media, and objects. It maps mechanisms of homogenization of styles, mimicry of curatorial hierarchy, institutional emulation, and the performative labor required to belong and succeed, eventually culminating into a destructive self-colonizing process. Historically relevant, the imitation imperative traces continuities from colonial strategies of the center and the periphery, and their relation to power imbalances in contemporary funding, festival, and residency logics that reward recognizable mostly in one way or the other, cute, mildly edgy, slick, slim, ableist frames.
Addressing the imitation imperative opens space to interrogate histories of privilege, elitism, and mimicry as a survival, or for the sake of hope, hopefully also a sabotage towards the politics of representation. Imitation imperative imagines practices and formats that interrupt reproduction. As artists, we had been working with the topic of imitation imperative for almost 6 years. In our research, the imitation imperative is no longer a silent backdrop. It becomes the materiality we sculpt, distort, and repurpose, dissecting the mechanisms of mimicry, the imitation game, not only with critical distance, but with embodied urgency.
One, historical background, post-transformation trauma. Where we come from, the question of communism is not only about communism. It is a dense field of time machine in which ideology, occupation, survival, and memory collapse into one another. The Soviet period is frequently positioned as the primary and even sole trauma shaping the region. A kind of a stuck bite in the throat, something that that refuses to be swallowed and digested. Type of a globus pharyngeus, a persistent feeling of a lump, tightness in the throat that does not hinder swallowing. Yet, this sole narrative, while understandable, is also reductive. Before the Soviet era, the region was already structured through the centuries of external control, feudal, imperial, colonial, where land, labor and cultural agency were owned, administered, and narrated from elsewhere. The return to Europe after 1989 did not mark a rupture, but rather a reorientation. The direction of the gaze shifted, but the structure of looking outward, of needing a center, remained intact. We learned to turn our necks accordingly, for a few hundred years in one direction, then for the next in another, toward the figure of the parental center.
In this sense, the post-Soviet transition cannot be understood as a linear movement toward autonomy. As the political economist Anna Podvršić drawing on dependency theory suggests, development does not follow a single universal path, and the repetition of Western models often reproduces dependency rather than resolving it. What appears as catching up is frequently a continuation of structural imbalance. Within such a condition, imitation is not a failure of originality, but a necessity produced by the system itself. One way this manifests is through this association, both individual and communal, not only in the psychological sense, but as a broader cultural and political strategy. In such this association, it becomes possible to occupy positions that do not fully align, to stand with Ukraine and not with Palestine at the same time, not being able to reconcile the ethical and cognitive dissonance this produces. This is not simply ignorance or indifference, but a symptom of a deeper dislocation, a loss of the capacity to orient oneself toward those who actually demand solidarity. The gaze, in this sense, is no longer freely directed, it is pre-structured. What deserves attention, critical empathy, or political alignment is mediated through inherited narratives of victimhood and its absurd legitimacy. Narratives in which the West has successfully fabricated its own position, appearing not as an active agent within these manipulative histories of dependency, but as a neutral horizon, a site of arrival, a guarantor of correctness, whiteness, and protection.
And as a cultural critic, Boris Budin observes in the essay of Children of Post-Communism, Eastern European societies that demonstrated political maturity in the revolutions of 1989 were rapidly reframed as immature right after, cast into a state of symbolic childhood. This shift transformed political subjects into pupils, dependent, teachable, and in need of guidance. This language of post-communism discloses a paradox that points at what is probably the greatest scandal of 20th century history. Those who proved their political maturity in the so-called democratic revolutions of 1989 and 90 have become thereafter overnight children.
My favorite now. Center, periphery, toxic love story.
The result of the imitation imperative is unsurprising. Emotional fatigue, a feeling of inadequacy, inferiority, loss of cultural identity, constant self-criticism, and finally, resentment. Elephant in the room, Katerina Botanova.
In the post-Soviet periphery, this absence of agency forces cultural actors, including artists, to operate within borrowed or imposed frameworks of visibility. If the center continues to reproduce itself through expansion, it may be not only through power, but also through a certain incapacity, a difficulty to inhabit vulnerability, to allow for non-accumulative forms of relation such as sharing without extraction. Where sharing is replaced by expansion, a constant sense of insufficiency, of never enough, persists. A similar dynamic and logic structures the position of artists within the very systems where artistic practices need to be maintained. Those who do not secure visibility at the level of production are mostly continually directed towards further development, gaining experience. As taught, their status remains provisional, as if they remain information for the sake of the infrastructures that claim to support artistic practices, but pretty much actually are sustaining power by using patronizing dilemmas towards artists, while artists themselves remain at the end of the income chain within limited power to reshape the terms of their participation. If one is always in voluntary learning, one is never fully authorized to speak.
In her text, Body-Friendly Dance Floors, by a cultural worker and dramaturg Anna Vujanovic, she reflects precisely on independent dance ecology. Oh, sorry. We teach, quote, "We teach and make work inside a democratic capitalist world that calls itself free, while distributing freedom unevenly in classrooms, studios, and small stages. This tension appears most clearly through the body, as if the body were a ledger on which rent, mobility, ability, and the cost of rest are calculated. The basic premise of this word is that each of us humans owns their body and the capacities, creativity, and labor that flow from it, and can exchange these freely. Political theory formulated this centuries ago, but the practice of our field contradicts it daily. Getting to own one's body, its time, health, and mobility depends on class, gender, race, ethnicity, nationality, ability, and family money. In dance, where the body is both medium and means of production, the contradiction becomes concrete in the most ordinary ways. Late trains taken after cleaning shifts, applications written at 3 o'clock in the morning, a physio appointment postponed because the month has already cost too much. It is often glossed over with phrases like, artists are precarious, which is as accurate as it is misleading.
In the post-Soviet periphery, this produces a layered condition of an ongoing need to adjust to shifting centers of recognition. What is often described as post-transformation trauma can be also understood as the cumulative effect, a mutation of these reorientations, a continuous turning toward elsewhere, without ever really recognizing and stabilizing one's own considered an inspiring ground. Within such a field, imitation operates less as copying than as a technique of translation, a way to enter existing frameworks and remain legible within them. Rather than seeking yet another point of orientation, the question may be how to shift attention away from where one is expected to look and towards how that direction is produced in the first place. Ghostly time travel machine. The running behind this particular feeling of constant catching up creates not only a value-based relation, but also being behind in time for those values to be part of political and cultural identity canons. Like a younger child imitating the older sibling, arriving at their own understanding much later, covered by the shadow of the more established psychology of the older sibling, the notion of delay comes to the forefront, and the bitter taste of ghostly time traveling occurs, where late arrival becomes the locally cool relation to the present and reveals its dependency on center ideologies of references, but fails to reflect critically on the locality of culture production. This split creates a double cultural consciousness filled with shame. Keeping up with mastering the culture of the center other as the one and only, the higher, the one where one can, if lucky and or aggressive enough, scrap a piece of privileged cake. In the destructive process of self-colonization, it is a foreign time in a distance to its origins, repositioned to be of presence in here, like the time of the star that arrives a million years later, including the possibility of the star being already dead, operating with a false premise of success, a false estimated time of arrival, and constantly escaping its getting up to speed as if it moves faster than the speed of capitalistic transformation. Okay, always off, always slightly cringe, always othering and alienating the experience of there and then. Through the filter of foreign canon or imported reference. This foreign time that exists in some kind of disassociated dramaturgy becomes a quasi-moralistic goal, blindly observed from an emotional wasteland filled with resentment, misconception, severance, and eventual grief of its post-communist reality. Some magical Western pumpkin carriage transformation at an unknown midnight, and a puff, one finds oneself in utopian cartoon-like resolution, where unfortunately, and to the disappointment of peripherally made Cinderella, the spell of the promised unveils its cheap and limiting conditions eventually, magically exposing its rotten self, which creates a strange relation between a small post-communist child and their Western mother in a rush. rhythms that the short legs of the experience of capitalism and the simple lack of technology can't allow the Eastern European child to catch a glimpse of synchronization.
Another ghostly time machine feeling occurs as well, where the experienced delay produced the extended waiting for the promised eventual arrival. The disenchantment paradox that appears here unfortunately results from the fact that what is supposed to arrive is in fact already in rubbles for years. The so-called freedom of neoliberal capitalism, so awaited by post-communist children, fully revealed its limitation in leading to social division and reproduction of settler colonialist strategies of wealth accumulation by the rich, male, white, heteronormative, and religious, as said project was always inevitably tied to Christianity, through further precarization and exploitation of indigenous communities, working class, and minorities. 4. Off-white proximities. In this sense, imitation as a post-transformation strategy in relation to Western morals, liberal ideologies, and spirituality is not only a way to catch up with the promise of economic progress or forward thinking, but also a bit of a seat at the table of the white privilege. Off-white here names this liminal condition at the border of whiteness for Eastern European bodies, a position that acknowledges phenotypical privilege, yet remains conditional and unstable. It signals an existence granted only through imitation, through catching up, through the constant labor of proving one's belonging, a form of passing, if to borrow from the queer and trans discourse. As Alexander Kiosev describes it, this is a self-colonizing identity, one that adopts Western moral standards while internalizing a persistent sense of lack. It is a position that can be revoked at any moment for reasons grounded in nothing other than racist logics. Then the problematic relation to currency of identity, some kind of imaginative identity Bitcoin, of Eastern European artists within the Western market becomes a convoluted tension between the supposed white privilege and lacking of market preferable orientalization. Culturally familiar whiteness of the post-communist bodies, even with its recognizable Christian history of violence, does not translate towards Western signifiers. Because how does one invest in economy of art with the lesser, undeveloped, conceptually, and so on, utterly unrelated content created by non-referential copy-like artists?
The distance becomes obvious, where the signifiers remain insufficient, both geographically and conceptually. Mediated through a framework of emulation, they too closely resemble the familiar and consequently are dismissed as derivative, lacking originality. This distance also inhibits their ability to accumulate cultural value within present processes such as orientalization, where tokenization, drawing on older colonial strategies, structures the conditions for representation. The process, which in the case of Eastern European art could actually create a sense of non-space and eventually produce a crack, a cut in the linearity and a resulting space to engage in, following writer and art critic Marina Wischmidt here, infrastructural critique. A critique that reveals its oppressive undergoing, purposefully hidden infrastructures, and digs its post-colonial remains, and is open to its own failure in order to reinvest into ground building, aware of its complexity and sensitive to its problematic origins. And now, Final thoughts, closing utopias. Some of them early in their 30s, some approaching their 40s. Post-transformation democracies need to arrive to the body that can hold emotional maturity. First of all, we have to acknowledge the accumulated resentment and, if needed psychoanalytically, work through it without falling into vengeful dispositions and start building other than that of far-right, old news, fascist, glue for every wound-like kind of infrastructures for the future to be possible. Infrastructures grounded deeper than the capitalist sewage system, and possibly derived from the vast history of communality and solidarity. Second, maybe a shift of where and how to look needs to happen, where the perspective of what to copy is repositioned towards other examples of resisting cultural and other self-colonization. Here, Manifesto Antropofago comes to mind, written in Brazil in 1928 in a pre-post-colonial theory context. Oswald Andrade writes about cultural cannibalism to organize the Brazilian rising identities. In his context, it becomes an invitation to devour the Eurocentric machine, digest its technologies, and spit out a new, closer to body felt identities, identities full of structural and corporal dynamism and entrenched in the soil of the local landscapes.
3. Understanding the local cut of shifting knowledge, the place of severance without stuck-like defensive unpacking the ghost terrors, not obscuring them either, but looking into practices with body to connect to critical knowledges, understanding of interconnectedness, role of accountability, as well as exploring critical empathy beyond only recognizable injustice and pain. And 4, and last, what about leaning simultaneously to the knowledge of the body, and when body-based practices supporting the complexity that the body can actually carry, the complexity embodied much farther than the split mind and the unrecognizable at this point spirit.
Can you read it again?
What about leaning simultaneously to the knowledge of the body and welcome body-based practices supporting the complexity that the body can actually carry? The complexity embodied much farther than the split mind and unrecognizable at this point spirit. Done. Thank you. Woof. Okay. Thank you so much for your attention. That was the one part. Now we're going to move to the second part. We're going to move to the discussion that follows this presentation. I'm going to quickly introduce our panelists, and then we're going to move on. Neti Nukanen, she, her, doomer, is a performance artist, director, and musician. Working with increasingly normalized alienation, she questions storytelling forms on their stakes. Her practice engages dark ecology through sound-driven narrative approaches, often using natural material like clay, grass, and ice. By building and undoing narratives, she opens a space for new dramaturgies, using performance to confront and transform. Okay. She holds a BA in choreography from School for New Dance Development. Her work has been presented at Sofinsale, Impulse Dance Festival, Saal, Biennale and Tartu Art Museum, among others. Since 2017, she has toured with Florentina Holzinger. Project manager Kaje Kunel, yes, is active in the contemporary performing arts scene, managing projects and curating the seasonal and festival program of Kanuti Gildisal, both together with colleagues. The names. Well, I'm gonna go. Eva Astachowska is an art scholar, critic, and curator. She leads research projects related to art and culture in post-socialist period and entanglements between post-socialist and post-colonial perspectives in the Baltic and Eastern Europe. Agnia Sheiko is a Lithuanian contemporary dance choreographer, artist, director of Sheiko Dance Company, and the head of a contemporary dance association. She's known for her interdisciplinary approach, attention to the sensitive social topics, and a wide range of artistic forms. After completing her studies at the Rotterdam Dance Academy Codarts, she chose to return to Klaipėda. Is it correct? I'm trying. Sorry, I'm from where she has been building and nurturing the contemporary dance community and its audience ever since. Ruta Junevičiūtė is an interdisciplinary artist and choreographer. They hold a BA in choreography from SNDO, receiver of DanceWeb 2017 and Atlas 2026 scholarships. In the past decade, she has been researching body memory, transgenerationality, and holistic process of healing. Her work explores embodied knowledges, interrelations, oppressed emotions, and uncensoring one's voice. In 2023, she published a book, Aesopica, on the effects of political censorship and the phenomenon of Aesopica language. Okay, very good. And there's this.
I took already.
So we're gonna join you somewhere here. No, we've been together for enough at this point. Okay, so we're gonna start with like, do you have what? Yes. I was wondering if maybe we can like do something like, yeah, or some, yes, we shift the body. Yes, let's change places. You can also change places. Yes. So we have like a starting question, which is quite open, and it's like a quick round for everybody. Where would each of you place the imitation imperative in your own body? And how do you relate to it, maybe?
My first physical image that came when I saw this question was this. And another one was, which I actually embody, is I'm actually leaning towards, and I'm not putting my heels on. It's not very good. In the end, like it wears out a lot, and I'm not. I'm sorry. It's not healthy. I mean, because then I'm not actually grounded, and it's not even in my belly, so not so good with intuition then and stuff. Yeah.
Where do I feel it in my body? Maybe I feel it in my stomach when I'm in a strange country and I'm looking for food, and I see all the restaurants and world foods, and I tend to lean to the ones that are far away.
Yes, I can answer. Anybody else? So I can think a bit more.
Yeah, imitational imperative. So I guess it's in the back of my head. I could feel it in the back of my head because it's something that I cannot see myself. It's more like it's still related to my brain work, but something which maybe quite often is unconscious. And yeah, in that way, I would probably place it in that part of my body.
I don't feel it in my like in a body part or something. So I think I will not continue this type of answer, I guess. But that's fine, no? Yeah. Yeah, it would. I think I don't know right now where I would feel it in my body. Imitation, like because I didn't know what means imperative. I don't really know this word so well. So I was more like imitation or repetition, maybe. This was something that when you sent the questions and stuff, then I was like, imitation. So how do I relate to imitation? Maybe is how I relate to this question. Yeah, sometimes I think of like how if I would be like a historian in the future, like how I would see the fabric of time of this time this period where I live. And I think like things that repeat or, yeah, maybe that's more about the word repetition than imitation, because I think there's also a difference somehow. So maybe the repetition or things that repeat, they kind of create the landscape of time or the fabric, like the fabric of time. And this is something that you start noticing most if you really zoom out. So I think it's just how I make my choices sometimes is how I want things to be looked at. I'm somehow very thinking about it a lot, like what things I want to repeat, even if sometimes repetition seems empty or imitation seems empty, but I think there's a lot of value in how, when you kind of think in a way like, how do I want this to be set in time or something like this. I don't know if you follow, because it's a bit different angle, but yeah, it like if you look at let's say urban landscape, or you walk around in the city, like what kind of stickers you see, and it creates a landscape, and then you're like, okay, it's like a mark of time or something. So I think it's like you can make your own choices a lot in it. Like, how do I want this time to stay as remembered or something? How do I want this? Yeah, how would I imagine this time to be remembered by? Which imagery? Which I don't know, signs, slogans that are often repetitive and maybe considered empty or when through repeating. But yeah, so my relation is kind of that, I would say.
So then we have one more question. We have actually a couple of questions. The second question: in what ways do you experience the pressure to catch up in aesthetics or in a political sense or whatever theoretical, and how does that affect the work you do?
I would speak here about the lack of process or time for process. Like talking about the context we are in, you know, so
this kind of trying to be in the loop of catching up or trying to fulfill something, you know, or so it's really, I think, yeah, I would really kind of point the process and be really kind of owning the process and having the time for that. And this I see a very, very big difference from the, like, let's say from the Western field, that we just don't have a chance in a way, you know, like to do that. It is a huge, huge pressure, I would say that.
Yeah, maybe I can continue. I somehow understand that this question you ask, it is related to this, yeah, the context under this term, imitational context is in Europe, post-socialist and so on, post-colonial. All these very heavy things you also brought in your talk. But actually, yeah, and then of course this is think about this post-socialist and Eastern European relations that we are used to kind of be placed in the box that there is this kind of repetition of already established schemes or somehow the concepts and so on. But I think it's at some point I think it's even not so interesting to think to somehow to perceive these differences or similarities in that terms, because at some point already, like Eastern European, at least people in the creative fields, shifted that to that why they should imitate actually, that they can create their own narratives, and I think they are quite good in doing this, but I think where I would think more about this catching up is a more generational thing, or this acceleration of time, where all like Westerners, Easterners, and all the planetary context is thrown in. That there's always this lack of time, and everything goes much faster. And I think now with artificial intelligence, this running of and changing of concepts is happening even more. And then this catching up is rather that you keep on being on the track and not staying somewhere behind, just because the time is flying super fast, and it's really difficult to catch up with these changes that are happening all the time.
But can I ask you, how do you think, because I sometimes really wonder about this bodily experience of the time is moving really fast. Is it actually like a artificial thing, or how would you expand the thought? What makes the time to move faster? And maybe after, for Agnia, I was wondering, how did you mean this difference when that you feel that, like, for example, in West, whatever it means, at this point, this difference, could you a bit elaborate? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just it's the pace of our times, that it moves so fast, and on one hand there is definitely strong imperative or pressure to keep on running and running faster. But then of course you can choose this alternative or resistance strategy and just step out and downshift and move to the countryside and not follow what's happening. Actually, I had a strange a bit feeling. I visited the exhibition upstairs, which is about this generation Z, and I already felt that I'm not catching up, because this is completely different language they are talking. And then the question I was asking myself, should I catch up and really to learn this language, or should I just stay with this?
What I meant is a difference in, you know, like I will stay in our field, in a dance field, that the difference how we work in how we are being productive and how we are trying to catch up. Maybe it's more kind of, yeah, maybe I don't mean that to catch up, maybe the same sense what you are, you know, like we're telling, but it's more that the focus during the creative, let's say, production time, you know, goes so much into the result and so much into the being productive and so much keeping that track, you know, and even talking, you know, about the institutions, you know, like it's never time for the process, and even, you know, like the funding system is also, it's not for the processes, you know, it's always talking about the result. And this, you know, like what we are also talking a lot about it, you know, and how to bring back the attention also to the process, but still, you know, like you have to run and catch up all the time, you know, like, yeah, so this is what I meant.
I was just thinking, I had some thoughts in relation, maybe even to both of you. I just remember from the lecture that you were speaking, you were talking about how for artists, how some artists, I don't even know, some artists, the practice almost always contradicts the structure. You were talking about it, no? And yeah, I think it's a little bit to do with this process idea of that there's never enough time for process, blah, blah, blah. But I think also like we kind of, yeah, I think it's dance or performance or theater or yeah, performative arts has this potential to work with time in a different way and to create this space for, as much as possible for process and stuff. And I think this work is not so insignificant actually somehow, because we talk about canons and stuff, but we are also the canon, like we contribute to the canon actually. And yeah, we are creating this landscape that future historians will be like, there's a canon of this, you know? And I think I just hear it a lot, and I think we all kind of agree probably in this room that, yeah, that this idea of the process is like maybe undervalued through different structures that are established. But I feel like, yeah, we somehow, yeah, I think there's potential to, yeah, investigate that somehow or to work against it. And I think we do, or I know that there is interest to, yeah, to try to change that somehow. And yeah, and it's not so insignificant, I think, than it might sometimes feel. This.
And maybe shifting away a little bit from the process and back to the initial question, because when I thought about what am I catching up, then first thing is about this like time-wise catching up and this like constant hurry and deadlines and premieres and how the production cycle urges us to catch up. But it made me also think about this, like how in this context of looking to the West and kind of having to prove ourselves constantly here in the East or in the Baltics, I think that we have been catching up so strong that we have kind of spurted ahead. But that I feel actually quite a lot in my working context, that if I look at our work style, I think we're doing a very good job, actually. and this is something that is, I guess, a little bit related to this inferiority complex, that we have to prove ourselves and we have to answer to the emails in this reasonable time amount. And we kind of have to prove that our artists are valuable, and we have to prove all of those things. And I often feel now that my disbelief that the colleagues in the West who have done this maybe for this 60 years and 50 years, like we talked before, and not 30 years as we hear, that they have some sort of an upper hand, but not always. And it's also been kind of a like reassuring and nice realization. And I think we should kind of all acknowledge this. Yeah, this is something with the phrase catching up that came to mind.
Okay, so I can maybe agree about the work ethics. I think that's kind of an important place to think through all these small communities of these different small countries. Yeah, we are small enough to not to catch up, but to create maybe the time zone that is body friendly.
No, because I wanted to say also coming back to the process, like when it started from like a personal, like what we talked also before, just from a personal experience of some kind of like being exposed to West and coming back, being, but then we started this process 6 years ago, and actually funny enough, we kind of agreed that we never gonna premiere. Like, so we actually took your, I just wanted to say, like, we kind of took your advice before we met. There was something about this that, like, this is not a research or a way or a thing that we're gonna ever, like, finalize, because it's something that, like, that gave us some kind of motivation or some kind of motor for the last 6 years, and it kind of keeps on producing different formats of this being one of them, for example, and the article maybe, hopefully, being a second one of them. So maybe that's one. I mean, I want to jump actually to one of the questions, kind of jumping, but like that's maybe like one of the examples of like infrastructures that I would say like, or like proposals, infrastructure that maybe could work in some ways. And I wonder if you could imagine or have an examples of infrastructures like this or that already are working in your context, let's say. So in the institutions that you work with or you work within or in your practice itself, or what would you say?
It's super specific, but it's just something that made me feel a lot of space at one point in, most recently in like, let's say how I see my work or something like this, was to, it's so specific, but basically I was trying to find a way to create a portfolio or dossier or a way of methodology of working where I never talk about the work, the productions, the products, or the, let's say, show that I make, and I don't put it as a documentation, I made the show, but I lay out the ways I work, basically. And I never say if it was in a gallery, theater, music hall, whatever, but it's like, I work with, I don't know, storytelling as blah, 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 or whatever, I don't know, I have. And then I give examples of how I work or how maybe this notion has appeared in many works that I do. And then I sort of gather them. And this gave me a lot of space. And I don't know, it's super specific and like artist practice based, but I don't know, it was really nice for me to explore that and to really not to like have a sense that I'm like selling a show or something, but I travel with my practice and like I have these methods how I work, and I bring them wherever I go, and sometimes it's the same show that I've done, but this is like secondary somehow.
In Lithuanian Dance Association, we have we created, I think like 5 years ago, a structure of short residencies in the regional culture centers. So the system is that artists are applying in a duets to go to the culture houses, let's say, and they are accepting artists. And during the week, they can do a research and also meet the local communities. And it's kind of working really well. And every year we get much more applicants from the culture houses. And since last year, we established the kind of second stage of that, you know, also to have a possibility to be for a week on the last stage of your work, you know, like to have a premiere there. So I think this, we don't have kind of this governmental infrastructure. So we are creating on the basis of like our activities, some funding and regions.
I need time. Yeah. I mean, thought about iceputter actually. I just wanted to bring iceputter to mind that like also this residency was like kind of like not invading was not a good word, but like kind of like hijacking the structures of the little village.
Can you tell me what is iceputter?
Iceputter is a place in Latvia that we went once for and then like somehow it was hijacking the little weird places, not a little actually, but places in the village. Like we worked in this beautiful place that is like a cultural house for factory workers, of the key factory workers. And it was like such a, and they would like enter in this kind of very awkward exchange also with us. Like we would also go to the factory, would also like relate to factory. I really loved the experience. It's just like continuing a little bit the thought of it.
Yeah, there's something about like adaptation, no? That is so like fruitful for processes, right?
Yeah, that it's not maybe immediately always related to like we get money and we do something, but maybe there's something like I feel like we work also this way, that we kind of like we work towards something that will maybe eventually bring money, which is maybe not the smartest economical decision we ever made. I must say, don't do it maybe, but on the like, I think that's it's some ways that's the statement we do. Like I would say yes, me maybe because maybe it's, but like I also took at some point that. That's art that interests me also in some ways, because it kind of like keeps on going and not it's like it's produced just because there was a conditions made for it. Yeah. And yeah, I thought about Katie Duck actually. Katie Duck was always saying like, let the gig come to you and not that you work towards the gig. So you work, and the gig just arrives at one point and you just like do the gig. But it's not about the gig. Your life is not about the gig. It's about everything that happens in between.
It doesn't just arrive. Somebody needs to write an email to you or something.
Or read the email.
Yeah. Do you want to say something? Some examples from Kanuti of how you hijack the oppressive infrastructures?
Yes, I also think that this is the important key, that us on the sides of the institutions or any facilitating position want to and try to create those different opportunities. And I think the key is in a way to create more roles for artists and artistic minds than to produce a piece, and to also in a way captivate the artistic knowledge in a broader sense than only to present it as a piece where the audience comes and sees a full production. And I think like maybe not all from concretely our inventions, but I think what's lately in the Estonian field has been fruitful is like different formats popping up, where, for example, where two artists could meet and create something in a concrete time, but in a way the creation itself is not that important, but the meeting point. Or a format that we have where we propose to artists to create a short format, not a long one. and also at the same time to cultivate those supporting roles next to the artist, the creator, like to also facilitate the other positions in an artistic team that are equally crucial, and also how an artist can one month be a creator, other month be the performer, the next time be the dramaturg, and to also find these multiple identities, because I also think that being in this cycle of this creation constantly is very tiresome, and nobody can create a piece every 3 months. So yeah, maybe not such a very concrete example, but I think more and more like enriching this art field in meeting with the audience, but also inside of the art field is something that keeps the process more fruitful and open, maybe.
Yeah, I relate to this one. Sometimes I get a bit lost. What is this discussion? But I want to share about this culture of viewing performance and small scenes that I think all the Baltic countries have. Is a quite small scene. And there's a tight feedback loop with the audience, I think. So it's something about the connection with the audience, how we build these different ways of creating experience of watching performances, and that I see a huge potential of showing more work in progress and having these formats, which, for example, I know in Amsterdam, where I'm semi-based, that format was called open rehearsal. So it's just like audience is trained to see that this is a performative work that needs being seen while it's being made, because the matter is, the performative matter isn't between us, and it's changing every day, and it's good to get the feedback while you're trying things out. That format in Amsterdam didn't last long. It was because of funding. So funding bodies maybe didn't find it as valuable as a final product. There's general cuts because of politics in the Netherlands. But yeah, I think in Vilnius, for example, a place I know, not Riga and Thailand so much, I think it could really work, this culture of watching together things being made, and in a way that audience also participates in creating the experience, because performers are receiving and giving it back. And also, yeah, I think it's probably already be in the process of creating languages. How do we verbalize this, so many unverbal things in the performance? So the school of, yeah, our school of verbalizing and creating.
Yeah, I had a thought. Yeah, because then what you could think is also like, is this kind of format good only for the artist, or is it also good for the audience, or is it something that there's also like how to be an audience, or like there's this canon also kind of needs to parallelly evolve as much as the artistic practice, but also how to be an audience and how to look at works, creative works. Yeah, because this is also like another topic, like all the, like how we are in theaters, basically, how we watch what, yeah. Yeah, it's actually even more overwhelming topic for me, or even more like, wow, than the artistic practice one, because this leaks into like non-artists as well, you know, like a doctor coming to see your show, or say it again?
Hopefully that it leaks actually there.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. Yeah, so this is almost more about like human behavior or something, or gatherings or something like this, and how this also has like a certain, yeah, ways of how we do it, and how, yeah, And maybe that, is this at the same level as how we as makers, let's say, expect the audience to take our work with the same open-mindedness? I don't know, not always maybe. Maybe the audience is not always equipped actually for this practice that I'm doing, so how this could have a bit maybe some kind of communication in between, or I don't know. Like should it be parallel? I don't know.
I will move to the next question, but because we have actually very equipped audience, so maybe the next question is for the audience, and the next question is, how do you relate to what is emotional maturity professionally for you? Who would like to answer to this question? Any volunteers in the... Okay, so the question is, how do you relate to what is for you emotional maturity professionally for you? So maybe also say what you do.
Yeah, I do dance. Actually, it's a very interesting point, because when you started to talk about the audience, I always was thinking, like, we as an artist, especially the performing arts artist, it's when we go on stage, I see this in a big scale, like really spiritual, emotional stripping, you know, which the process we have a pleasure. And we invite or ask other people to pay to come to see how we pleasure ourselves. I mean, in an artistic or mostly spiritual level. So I always thinking, you know, about the responsibility of us an artist, what we bring, what we ask to pay for, let's say. And this, when we invite audience or future audience to the process, it's very, how to say, enriching. And especially when I started to create performances for babies, it was really important to have them in the process, so I could test my artistic ideas and everything. But then it's always this thing about, okay, so probably when we invite them to process, we don't ask them to pay, because we see them as a, how to say, helpers or collaborators, yes. Or do we ask to pay? I don't ask to pay. But then when you already on stage with the kind of finished production, then it appears this kind of financial communication, you know, and sometimes people say, oh, this wasn't worth not even my time or my, you know, just being there, but it's also not, how to say, the money-wise, you know, this didn't, it's not worth the money I paid. So it's always, and then I think that why we always so keen into make a production which would surprise the world with our super interesting interpretation of Hamlet or whatever, you know, because we, as an artist, we don't have any instrument, we don't have any means to force people to use art. And that is not kind of essential, and I understand it's essential and whatever, but for the whole, a lot of people, it's not essential. So I always think about the responsibility of us as artists when we go on stage. What is the attitude that we have with people who we invite? Because I remember that hurt me a lot when one choreographer, a long time ago, from some country I don't remember even, said, I don't care what audience thinks. So for me this was a little bit, so why then you go on stage if you don't care what audience thinks? Thank you.
I have
also answer and maybe also a comment that for me emotional maturity is the awareness of the freedom problematics.
And I wanted to add that I think when I am emotionally mature, I cannot be sad about rejected applications and just keep doing what I'm doing and don't think that this rejection is meaning that I'm bad artist or something like this.
It's 16 past. So we still have 14 minutes. 14. Right? Am I right?
Maybe somebody more about
Sorry.
Hi, I want to a bit hijack the conversation because I feel like your lecture in the beginning was very interesting and now I don't really understand, as you said, what we're talking about. And I'm just thinking about what you're saying, basically promoting poverty in our field, saying it's okay, we don't have spaces, but we can work in a random basement with no floor, or let's even work outside and then we're connected to nature. And you know, like, and then we don't have money and spaces to do shows, so let's just share rehearsals with the audience, you know. And even if some practices that you mentioned are we surpass the West, in the end it doesn't matter because we don't have the money and the West has the money. So we can, I mean, even the shows, and I think we all know that win the highest awards and theater awards in Lithuania for dance, they have 5 shows. In Lithuania, and maybe if we tour in Latvia and Estonia, which almost never happens because we don't want to invite each other. Like, we want to invite people from the West. So I want to bring it back to the lecture in the fact that I think it's so ironic that you talked about this mimicry of the West in the Baltic Dance Platform, when we invite professionals from the West to sell ourselves to them. And let's be honest that we really wouldn't come here if it was only Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. It's lovely to see each other, but it wouldn't be so popular. And we invite them to be here, but then we still use all the keywords that they like: oppression, colonialism, all the identities, you know, to sell them, so they can sit here and jerk off and feel like we're the West, we're the oppressors, and yes, you show us you're the noble savages, you rehearse in the outside, you know, like I feel like we're trying to convince ourselves that we're past that and we're better than them, but we're still talking the language that they buy. And it's not only for Eastern Europe. I mean, all the non-Western countries face that. In the end, we have to talk about our authentic identity, relationship to nature, again, all these things, because this is what sells, and they can feel better for programming 1 or 2 artists not from that field. So, and I appreciated that some of the solutions you proposed, but even this context shows that there's no solution. How do we go out of it? There's no way of going out of it. And I don't say it in a pessimistic way, but in a way that let's not trick ourselves that we will find another way. Like, I don't know. What do you have to say about this?
Thank you for hijacking. But what do you do? What's your daily
I dance.
struggle?
I am a dancer and choreographer.
Okay.
And I'm from Lithuania. I live in France, Belgium, somewhere there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, how do we move on? I want to say that I didn't propose open rehearsals because of poverty. This is totally not what I'm saying. It's more to expand the format, what the performance is. When is at the beginning, what is it is the end, who participates in creating it, and it's expanding the notion and thinking together. And what do we receive? What do you think is worthy to receive? Is the result worthy to receive? So the premiere is worthy, and I wouldn't charge people for open rehearsals and work in progress, but yeah, I think it probably needs some funding to pay for labor anyway. But it's really not because we are such a power, like it's not connected to poverty. So I would like to just, yeah. And I think it's a good concept, by the way.
I would actually follow what David said, you know, like already when we started to speak and with the colleagues, you know, like, okay, what is the topic, you know, in general, you know, like of this Congress and where we are and who we are. I said, oh my God, we are circling and circling in the same topics, you know. Isn't it already time to finish that and to go on and to, you know, like somehow to not to speak, okay, what kind of identity we are. You know, already we were talking about it, you know, like 15 years ago about the same things, you know. So why we are kind of always, and as David says, trying to sell, you know, like not our artistic things or not our artistic creating, I don't know, products or whatever, how we call it, but trying to sell the topics or, you know, so.
Like imitation imperative.
Yes.
But no, but I think we're not so innocent also, so yeah.
Yeah, I just, in a way, actually would like to oppose a little bit to Donatas, saying that, yeah, maybe we are, and also Agni, what you're saying that, yeah, we are kind of repeating, but the context is changing, and for example, the full-scale invasion in Ukraine is actually, it requires us to kind of, to keep on thinking and also talking about like what is our relation in the geographical sense, and but it's the answers are not the same, which maybe were like 10 or 5 or even 2 years ago, and yeah, I would not even see, like, I'm coming more from the visual arts context, but I think it's parallels are really very similar, or basically we are still in in the same waters. I would say that I think, yeah, this East-West confrontation is somehow, we can say it has lost its actuality, but they're not superior anymore, I would say, like, you know, about the ways how people in our region manage to adapt to the new situations, or to create new strategies, or even like maybe I wouldn't like to use broad words like visionary thinking, but it's much more, yeah, this another term, resilience, but we are more resilient in a way than if we would say to the old Europe, and yeah, somehow this complex of being you know, less worthy is not worth it somehow.
Yeah, I think it is internalized, and it is also a certain kind of learned behavior, and I think it's really good what you say, that it's also like, it is also our responsibility to somehow recognize these patterns, how we continue them, where to some extent we also stand in certain kind of context of privilege, and at the end of the day we also not so poor, and at the end of the day we do have so many qualities that so-called like old Europe, like I had to think a lot about like hospitality and that kind of experiences of how still with this kind of like a poverty that we have, we still manage to be so much more hospitable in the way how we approach, at least that's my experience in relation to West and all that. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, but in a way, yes, I can relate to this, that of course still some of the Western context have more money, but it's also sometimes good to talk about other things than money. But also, I think it's so important to, exactly as you said, notice the internalized thoughts and patterns, and also to acknowledge the new ways. I think this platform on itself and this existence of it is a way around it and against this, and also other more local initiatives that have now being born. And I think the corona crisis had a lot of effect on this, people working more in close context in the regional sense. We also have this other amazing Baltic venture called Baltic Takeover, and these are the examples. And I think also the regional structures in the Nordic-Baltic have gotten a lot more actual in those recent years. So I think people actually are quite actively working against this, looking to the West, wanting to only book the Western artists in, or trying to ship ours further and further, but maybe also ship in the closer region. So yeah, I think the question is how to find the ways to work against it and acknowledge it.
I'm just thinking how sometimes the repetition or imitation, let's say generational or more cultural, or imitation or repetition can work sometimes as a tool, or like a weapon to identify, and sometimes it's like a hindrance. I'm just noticing different ways how we use this identification of the East or Baltics sometimes as a weapon and sometimes as a hindrance or something. I'm just noticing because I think I'm a very I've lived like away from Estonia already more than 10 years, and I've never really had a very clear sense what it really means to be Estonian, but I do identify very strongly as Estonian. But I think it's just maybe I'm just personally also like fighting against this repetition, or tradition or something, and then it's also the feeling of being a bit alienated and lost all the time. But I identify through alienation, so that's why it's hard to say anything. Yeah, more observe.
We have to wrap it up. Time is money. Maciej, would you like to say like a ending sentence?
No, I was just thinking that thank you. It's also like I think I will say this, like our project is kind of provocation for this, to actually talk about this, to have it this situation of like it's real, the kind of conditions and stuff, and then like we also thought like how to not finish on pessimism, like how to not finish and go to cry all together, or maybe it would be nice also, like maybe it's needed somehow, but like all cry together, but like kind of like go and like propose, you know, like do not be like post-structuralism, but like kind of like make some kind of propose for action. So it's not just yeah, we are this and we are this. So like I thank you so much also for giving like a real also examples of some of things that are already happening and that already functioning and somehow, and like how we move them and stuff. I also we were talking with Neti today. Okay, last that like imitation can be also like liberating. Like it also can be like this moment of like you copying something, you are liberating from your own kind of like necessity of find something. Maybe there's also like a lot of learning, Laima, you were saying, like there's also like a lot of learning that we actually do through repetition, through imitation. We do, our bodies literally learn how to walk and speak through it. So it's also a great tool to use as a weapon.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for your time and attention. Let's be emotionally mature.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Now it's my time to read a little bit. Dear awesome and happy people, we have some good news. The Congress part has come to an end, and we are moving on to the platform. Please follow Gabriela. She has an info sign, or check your WhatsApp group. At 8 p.m. we will open the platform with a drink and a snack at the Three Musas Roof Bar. See you there.